Welcome, everyone, to the Northwood University Freedom Seminar. It's my pleasure to introduce our next speaker, Colonel Alan B. West, a man who has literally spent his entire adult life in public service. He was a military officer in the Army, one of 4 generations in his family to serve in that capacity. Veteran of Operation Desert Shield and Desert Storm, and who received 3 Meritorious Service Medals, 3 Army Commendation Medals, and a Bronze Star. And I'm sure we all want to thank you for your service, Colonel West. In 2010, he was elected to the Congress from the 22nd Congressional District of Florida as the first Black Republican since Reconstruction to be elected to Congress. And he did some good work while he was in Congress, voting for the Balanced Budget Amendment and 30 different bills designed to empower small businesses and reduce government barriers to job creation, boost American competitiveness. So we appreciate your service in office to us there, Colonel West. He was also the director of the Booker T. Washington Initiative at the Texas Public Policy Foundation, contributing columnist for townhall.com. He's the author of 2 books, Guardian of the Republic and Hold Texas, Hold the Nation. He also hosts his podcast, The Old School Patriot, and he's currently chairman of the Republican Party of Texas. And he's here to tell us today about the achievements and continuing relevance of one of his personal heroes and role models, Booker T. Washington. And I will now invite you, Colonel West. Tell us a little bit about this man.
Well, appreciate it. Thank you so very much, Dr. Matchek, for having me on with you. And also, I just so appreciative that Northwood University would give me this opportunity to be with you all. I love Northwood University, and I served on the board there for a little while. And if you ever get a little bored and you want to get a little sunshine and fresh air, go out and sit on the bench that I think has my name and a quote from me there at Northwood. So thank you for having me, and I guess everything's okay. You can see me well with the video. But what I want to talk about today, you say that this is a freedom seminar. I think that the most important aspect of freedom is an education. Because if you are an educated person, if you're a person that can critically think for yourself, if you're a person that can go out and do things and produce things based upon your own skills and abilities, and be a productive member of a society, then you are truly a person that can be free. You have individual freedom. You're not going to be someone that can be economically enslaved. You're not going to be someone that is part of a collective. You can truly be an individual. And that's really what the United States of America is all about. And as a young Black conservative, I tell you that when I think of the person that has had probably the most philosophical impact on me and personal impact on me as well is a gentleman by the name of Booker Taliaferro Washington, known as Booker T. Washington. And in this day and age when so many people are talking about things as, reparations or talking about race relations and still talking about slavery, I just think about someone like a Booker T. Washington, who was a young man that was born into slavery and lived his life early as a slave. But one of the things that if you read his incredible autobiography, and I have it here, and hopefully that you all will read it one day, Up From Slavery, he only wanted one thing. If he could get his freedom, he wanted an education. And as he would sit out, and the book would talk about how he would sit outside and look into windows and see little white children reading books and things of this nature. And he was just hungry for that. So when that day finally came when they told him that he was free, he understood that he really wasn't free. Now, physically, he was free, but intellectually, he did not feel free. From a metaphysical sense of being able to be a productive member of society, he did not feel free. And so what was it that Booker T. Washington wanted more than anything else? It wasn't that he just wanted to have his 40 acres and a mule. No. He wanted to get that education. He wanted to secure his ability to, have a bright future. But even more so, he wanted to make sure that he enabled others to have a bright future. Because when you think about our lives is really not about what we achieve and what we accomplish. It's about what we enable others to achieve and accomplish. And he understood that. So here's a young man who finally is free. He wants an education. But where he was living at the time in present day West Virginia, there was no place for him to go to get an education. So there was a place, and it was called Hampton Institute. We know that today as Hampton University. It's located along in Hampton, Virginia. They're along Virginia Beach, that area. And so, how did he get there? He scrapped up a few little dollars or what have you to get him as far as he could. But then basically, he walked. And along the way, he stopped and he took up little odd jobs and work so he could earn a little bit more money. As a matter of fact, when you read his autobiography, you will find that he even slept under the wooden sidewalks there in Richmond, Virginia. He was working, but he didn't have a place to stay or what have you, but he was saving his money. See, that's the determination that he had to understand true freedom that comes from the ability to use this and to educate yourself so that you can have a bright future. Now, when Booker T. Washington arrived at Hampton Institute, he didn't have a scholarship. He did not come from some well-to-do family. He did not have anyone that sponsored him, but he had a goal, a dream, a desire, and a burning fire within him. And so he told them that he would do whatever it took to be able to be there at Hampton Institute to earn an education. He told them he'd clean up, he'd do whatever it takes. And that's exactly what he did. And his reputation became so well known because of his discipline and his dedication to, not just meeting a task or meeting a standard, but excelling in it. And so he ended up having his education in his later years sponsored and paid for because how he proved himself early on in his dedication to that single thing, an education which he knew would lead to his true freedom. Not just the physical, not just the breaking of the chains that allowed him to then be free, not the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendments in the Constitution, but real freedom in his education. And when he did graduate Hampton Institute, the first thing he wanted to do was to go back to West Virginia and teach his relatives, teach his family, teach others, get them to understand how important it was to have an education so that they could truly go out there and enjoy and experience and understand this new freedom that they had. Because sure, they had the chains that were taken off of them, but they were still enslaved somewhat in their minds, and their minds had to be expanded. And again, he was noticed and recognized for his efforts, not just going through Hampton Institute and his dedication, his drive and desire and determination, but then what he did afterwards and going back and helping his family and teaching his family. So some people went to Booker T. Washington and they gave him the ultimate challenge. They told him that it would be his mission to go down and establish the very first institution of higher learning for recently freed slaves in the South. Now, imagine that. Here's a young man that not too long ago was a slave, who became free, who got hit somehow across from West Virginia, across Virginia, over to Hampton, Virginia, completed his own education at Hampton Institute. Like I said, did not come from a well-to-do family or anything. Then went back to West Virginia and taught his family and his relatives. And now all of a sudden he's recognized and given a mission to go and start the very first institution of higher education and learning for blacks in the South, in Alabama. He chose the place called Tuskegee. And I think you know the rest of the story, but these important parts are so vital to understanding who he is. And you will come to understand the relationship of a visionary like Booker T. Washington and Tuskegee Normal and Industrial Institute to Northwood University. See, when Booker T. Washington went down and established Tuskegee Normal Industrial Institute, he did not have big backing or whatever. He had to prove a concept. He did not show up and there was already a beautiful campus like you have at Northwood University already laid out for him. He had to go out and find old dilapidated buildings and try to convert them. Yes, he had students that were ready to learn, ready to get an education, but he wanted more than just the book learning, as people down south will call it. And so when he thought about his 3-point plan for Tuskegee Normal and Industrial Institute, he came up with this: education, entrepreneurship, and self-reliance. Education, entrepreneurship, and self-reliance. That's true freedom. And that's what he wanted education to lead to. And so in having Tuskegee Normal and Industrial Institute, it was not just that they got the reading, writing, and arithmetic, but they got skills training. You know, the students there at Tuskegee Normal Industrial Institute, when he was able to acquire a building, they built upon that own building, the students themselves. They built their own beds, they built their own desks. They even had a brick making factory there, a kiln. And so they learned masonry. They learned all the different aspects of being a productive member of the culture and the society there, so that they could go out and truly experience freedom. Not just what you learned, but also what you could do and produce with your hands. Because Booker T. Washington understood that being able to go out and work, well, there was something to be proud of about that. There's a great story in his book, and many people have shared this. But one day, Booker T. Washington, the president of Tuskegee Normal and Industrial Institute, was walking through Tuskegee, Alabama. And there was a white woman that did not recognize him. But she asked him to come in and chop some wood for her. President of Tuskegee Normal Industrial Institute took off his jacket, went in and chopped the wood for the woman and bid her adieu and continued on his way. Some other white members of that community went up and told her, "Do you know who that was?" That was Professor Washington. And because of his humility, because of his kindness, because of him understanding that there's nothing wrong with a little bit of hard labor and hard work, she became one of the great donors to Tuskegee Normal Industrial Institute. And so I think it's so important that we realize on our college and university campuses is that college and university education, or education period, is not just there for a book learning. We also need to understand we need to have that character building. One of the things that Dr. Matchek just shared with me, and I knew about it, but I didn't know the great detail of it, and I haven't seen it, but Mr. Washington would have sessions with his students every Sunday evening. And he would not be there talking about history or math or science or anything. He would be talking about life lessons. He would be talking about character building, because that's all an important part of your education. That's all a very important part of your freedom, to be able to go out and be respected in a community, in a society, in your neighborhood, in your workplace. But when you think about what he was able to do there in Tuskegee Normal and Industrial Institute, think about a young man born into slavery who walked and got an education, who accepted what seemed to be an insurmountable mission, but yet he became one of the greatest orators and educators in the United States of America. Here's a young man born into slavery that hosted a United States president at his institution of higher learning. Here is a young man that was born into slavery that ended up having a sit-down meal with a president in the White House, Theodore Roosevelt. And see, that's what I want so many people to realize, is that education is that great equalizer. Education is the means by which we do attain ultimate freedom, because it unlocks all of the doors. My personal story, you're looking at a guy that was born in the inner city of Atlanta, Georgia in 1961 in a blacks-only hospital. What made the difference in my life? Two parents that understood that education was the great equalizer, that it could unlock any doors for you. And so my parents made the decision early on that I would not go to the two public schools in our neighborhood, C.W. Hill and John Pope. They sent me to Our Lady of Lourdes Catholic School, which was located right across the street from Ebenezer Baptist Church. If you know a little bit about history, you know that that's the church where Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. was the pastor. And of course, right there next to Ebenezer Baptist Church is his final resting spot. Imagine the impact that has on a young man in the inner city of Atlanta, Georgia, born in a blacks only hospital, to every single day of his early life walk past Ebenezer Baptist Church and the final resting spot of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Imagine what it's like to have a godfather who was a Tuskegee Airman, all because of Booker T. Washington established that place called Tuskegee Institute. And so when you come back and realize that education really unlocks the doors to true freedom, when you look at the example and the model of Booker T. Washington, when you look at Tuskegee Normal and Industrial Institute, when you understand his 3 points of education, entrepreneurship, and self-reliance, that has resonance to us today. When you think about the fact of George Washington Carver and all the incredible agricultural experiments and studies that he did, that kind of laid the framework for what we see today with agricultural research on many of our college and university campuses. And you think about what happened when all of a sudden they decided to have a test pilot program for black fighter pilots. Where did they locate it? They located it at Tuskegee. Why? Because Mr. Washington had established that incredible place that said that here, it was not just about that book learning. It was about the critical skills. It was about the abilities that you could unleash, because that's what an education does for you. And so if we look at what Booker T. Washington did at Tuskegee, think about what we could do on a campus like Northwood. The exact same thing, because at Northwood University, you really are kind of following the model of Booker T. Washington in your pursuits there. Northwood University is without a doubt one of the preeminent free market entrepreneurship universities in the United States of America. They do understand at Northwood that education, entrepreneurship leads to self-reliance. You think about all the incredible businessmen and women who have walked that campus at Northwood University, and look at the businesses that they have established. Look at the opportunities you have to be exposed to different aspects of the industries there, such as the automobile expo and show that you put on there at Northwood University. That really is a model that was started by Booker T. Washington. Because again, remember that it was not just about the book learning. It was about all of these other things. So that when those people graduated from Tuskegee Normal and Industrial Institute, they could go out and start businesses. They could go out and do things themselves. As a matter of fact, some of the local businesses there around Tuskegee and across Alabama, they wanted the bricks that were made there at Tuskegee Institute for their buildings. And that's what we want to have in our education system. I think it's fine to go and, study, gender studies or stuff like that, but that can't be the basis of education. The basis of education should be building your character and making sure that you're a critical thinking individual and you're a productive member of our society. That's what Booker T. Washington taught us in his education model. And I think that education model that he had is important for us, and we should be replicating it today to get our young people to understand that it's about what you can do with this. See, when I was growing up and I went to high school, we used to have things in our high school called woodshop. We used to have automobile mechanic. All of these different things that said that, you don't have to exactly go on to college, but here with the learning that you get, here's also skills that you can get based upon that learning. And then you can take that out into society and you can have success. You can be self-reliant. So I think that when you look at what he established there in Tuskegee, this is a great thing that we should be looking at today and bringing back some of these skills education and training, bringing back an entrepreneurship type of curriculum. Because if we do that, then we're going to make sure that we're producing the next great generation. George Washington Carvers, or even like my godfather, a Tuskegee Airman. I mean, when you think about, aviation studies and things of that nature, Why can't we have those type of studies in our schools, in our educations? When you look at what you are doing there, when you have some of these great business leaders that are coming in and speaking with you, that's what we have learned from Booker T. Washington, and that's what we need to continue to try to replicate on college and university campuses. Let me kind of close by bringing this up. One of the great quotes from Dr. Martin Luther King, and something that will always resonate with me, being a young man that was born and raised in the same neighborhood that produced him. He dreamt of a nation, of a country, that in the future would not judge his children by the color of their skin, but the content of their character. See, when you are educated, when you are able to go out there and experience true freedom, when you are able to go out and be self-reliant and be a productive member of our society, you don't have to worry about your skin color. You only have to worry about your character. And see, that's why Booker T. Washington would have those little lecture sessions with his students on Sunday evenings, because he wanted them to understand that your character is going to carry you even further than what your education could carry you. And so I would just say that as we go forward in America, we need to not be drawn back to discussing the things that divide us. We need to talk about the things that unite us. Because how could it be that a kid born in an inner city neighborhood in a blacks only hospital could grow up and become a lieutenant colonel in the United States Army, command a battalion in combat, over 600 soldiers, become a member of the United States House of Representatives, to represent the highest per capita income zip code in the United States of America at the time when I was a member of Congress? That was Palm Beach Island. And oh, by the way, when Northwood University, they have their nice outstanding business leaders event down at the Breakers on Palm Beach Island, I used to represent the Breakers, Mar-a-Lago. How could that be that a kid born in the inner city of Atlanta, Georgia, in a blacks only hospital could now be the chairman of the largest Republican state party in the country and have been the first black Republican member of Congress since Reconstruction from the state of Florida? It's all because of this. It's all because of the fact that the education gave me that true sense of freedom. But it also has to do with the content that you go out, that your reputation is well known amongst people. And that's why when you go back to that story of Booker T. Washington walking through the streets and the lady asking him to come in and chop wood, and he did it, and he continued on his way, and people knew who he was, he didn't get arrogant. He didn't say, "How dare you? I'm the president of Tuskegee Normal Industrial Institute." His character showed through. Character of humility, character of simple pride, the character of an educated man that understood that there's nothing wrong with getting out there with your hands and working a little hard. Students of Tuskegee grew their own food. They built their own college, every single aspect of the buildings, the furniture, all because of the vision of one young man who was born into slavery. But as his book says, he went up from slavery. God bless you all. And Dr. Matchek, I'm ready to take any questions that they have.
Well, thank you very much, Colonel. And I encourage you who are listening to put your questions in the Q&A section. You'll find it on the right-hand side of your screen. And let me, while people are formulating their questions, ask you, this is a question that pains me to ask, but I have seen research that suggests that kids today with Booker T. Washington's determination for an education are sometimes ostracized by their peer group, especially in certain inner city schools. And they've studied this. Your popularity is actually negatively affected by being a good student. And the phrase has been applied to this. It's called acting white.
Yeah.
Um, I wonder, how does this happen, and what is the antidote?
Well, it's very interesting you bring that up, Dr. Matchek, because you can go to there's a YouTube clip out there. I was asked to go up to Northwestern University. I'd say a pretty elite university here in the United States of America. And I was invited to talk about the Iranian nuclear deal, the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action. And I think that did a pretty good job talking about, that foreign policy issue. But there was a young lady who came to the microphone, and her very first question that she asked me was, "Do I identify as black?" And I just, yeah, I mean, you can go and you can see the video. And so I was kind of taken aback, and I kind of looked and thought, well, yeah. But what is happening in our country is that people are trying to say that based upon the melatonin in your skin, you're supposed to act a certain way. And even the person who occupies the White House right now did the exact same thing. When Joe Biden was on a radio program and he said, "If you don't vote for me, you ain't black." And so, therefore, what is happening in our country is that, and you're right, doctor. I mean, I've faced some of this because I went to private Catholic schools from grade 1 up to grade 9. And what you often get told is that you talk funny, you talk white, you talk like them. And it's really a test of your character to be able to push through that and realize is that you're just talking in an educated way. I remember when people were trying to codify bad English into a language called Ebonics. We don't need to do that. And so what that actually does is it keeps people in some type of sense of enslavement. Because what you're trying to say is that if you are expanding your education, if you're expanding your knowledge, if you're able to think critically yourself and make your own choices and decisions, then you're not following along with the collective herd. And therefore, you have to be attacked. Think about what just happened with U.S. Senator Tim Scott, who was a colleague of mine. He and I both came into the Congress at the same time in 2010. I mean, he stood up and gave a response to the president's address, and people called him Uncle Tim. And here in Texas, we actually had a county chairman for the Democrat Party that posted on social media calling Tim Scott an Oreo. Now, if you understand that is a very disparaging racist slur that basically says you're black on the outside and white on the inside. This is where we are in America. And I think it is appalling that we're allowing this to be perpetuated from the highest office in the land and attacking a sitting United States senator because he is not going along a certain ideological leaning. And so this is very serious in our inner cities because I saw that when I taught high school for 1 year in Deerfield Beach, Florida. You had black kids who were very smart and they wanted to do better and get better, but their friends kept pulling them down back into the muck and the mire with them. And I'll end on this. Back when I was growing up, we used to go to the grocery store and they used to have the all the crabs and everything in the big barrel. And you would always have the one crab that's trying to climb up and get out of the barrel. And then the other crabs would jump on his back and pull him back down. That's what you have happening. My mother said, never let the crabs pull you back down into the barrel.
That's a great image.
So I would say to the young people that are on this little call, you set your goals, your objectives, your sights very high. I mean, think about it. The Booker T. Washington's autobiography says up from slavery. It could have been very easy if some people had said, now you going to talk funny and you're acting all white and everything like that. That didn't deter him. All the detractors, regardless. He was focused on one thing, getting a good education, then establishing an institution of higher learning, leading to entrepreneurship and self-reliance for others.
So there are a lot of questions here. It's going to be They're going to be interesting. Jesus asks, how would you fix our public school systems? I know you
Well,
didn't speak to that directly, but
yeah.
he also follows up with that. What are your thoughts about critical race theory in our public school curriculum?
Well, first and foremost, I will tell you one of the things we got to do to fix our public school system is get back to educating our kids and not indoctrinating our kids. We've got to make sure that we're not trying to inculcate societal principles and values, but enabling them to be critical thinkers. One of the things that I don't like is standardized testing, because I think that you need to have functional testing, not just trying to say that we got to teach you how to take a test, and if you do well on the test, you're going to be successful. No. And I saw that when I taught high school down in Deerfield Beach, was that for a certain period of time, you would lose your students because they had to get what was called Florida Comprehensive Assessment Test immersion. And so basically they were trying to teach the kids how to take the test and beat the test. That's not how you train our next generations. And when you talk about critical race theory, I'm sitting here with Dr. Dale. I'd be damned if I want anyone to say to Dr. Dale that because of the fact that you have a white skin color, you're a racist. There's nothing you can do about it. And I think that that is horrible. That is divisive. That is destroying this country. The United States of America was founded on July the 4th of 1776 with the Declaration of Independence. A pretty interesting document if you want to read it to understand the relationship between the individual citizen and an institution of government. The United States of America was not started and founded in 1619, but yet that's what is being promulgated and taught in some of our schools. And so I think that we got to get back to education, entrepreneurship, self-reliance, not critical race theory, but producing critical thinkers. That's the most important thing.
Bryce asks, if your parents had not sent you to that Catholic school, would you be where you are today?
Well, I think the most important thing that the young man just asked was parents. Uh, when I was born in 1961, a two-parent household in the black community was between 75 and 77%. Today, the two-parent household in the black community is 24%. And so I think that regardless of where they sent me, and without a doubt, I mean, Our Lady of Lourdes did have an incredible impact upon me. But the fact that I had two parents in the household, that was really made the difference. One of the things Dr. Matchek and I were talking about before I came on, because my dad was a soldier in World War II in a segregated army. And Dr. Matchek used to kind of joke. He said, well, did he make you do push-ups before you ate dinner? And no, he didn't do that. But you know what my parents did do? I had to take a story out of the Atlanta Journal-Constitution, and I had to give like a 3-minute or so summary of a story to them before we had dinner. See, we need to get back to that, having parents that understand that it's not just the formal education, but it's the informal education. It's the character building type of education. I love math. I became an artillery officer because I love doing computations and physics and all of this stuff. Understanding how you take an artillery round from this, projectile shooting out of this cannon and making it hit something over there, and taking into effect all the meteorological effects and factors thereof. And so my dad got me interested in math by teaching me how to read the box scores from Atlanta Braves baseball games. And so if Hank Aaron went 2 for 4 in the game, what was his batting percentage for that game? And so I just became interested in all these things, interested in numbers. Then the next thing you know, my dad is showing me the business section to the Atlanta Journal-Constitution to get me to understand investments and things of that nature. And so I think that that's the most important thing. Sure, I could have gone to the public school. It would have been a little bit harder. It probably would have been a lot less discipline than what I got with Sister Judith and all the nuns there at Our Lady of Lourdes Catholic School. But I had two parents in the home, and they were the ones that really made the difference.
It does sound like your father had a little bit of Booker T. Washington in him. Jacob asks, how do you get to the point in our society where intellectuals and leaders with true values and ideals are appreciated and idolized more than athletes, performers, celebrities?
Well, one of the things I think that's what the media bombards us with is with these figures and these individuals. They're always out there on social media, what have you. But I always tell people instead of wearing a jersey of an athlete, why don't you wear the jersey of a soldier or a sailor or an airman, a marine? I think that one of the important things we got to do is get back to understanding what character is. Again, I think we have to understand what leadership is. The Army taught me that there are 5 aspects of leadership. And when I think about Booker T. Washington, it's right there. Courage, competence, commitment, conviction, and character. And when we look at our society today, the society is trying to tell us who should be our heroes, who should be our role models. My role models, my dad, a man who was a corporal in the United States Army in a segregated army, and my godfather who was a Tuskegee Airman, William Sticky Jackson. And when you would sit down and listen to them and gather all of their wisdom and their thoughts, perspectives, and insights, they were preparing me, they were molding me, they were shaping me. And I did not need to look, Hank Aaron was a great baseball player. Hank Aaron was not my role model. Okay, Lou Alcindor, that was his name before he became Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. I love the sky hook, but I'm only 5'8", or 5'9". I couldn't do a sky hook, but I had my dad, and I had other men that were around me. I had my mom and who she was and what she showed me. So I didn't need to worry about looking to who society said I should follow. I had people in my home that I could follow. And so that's the challenge for you young people out there today, is choose for yourselves who you want to see as a role model. Pick up this book, and I will tell you, you will find a very, very good role model in Booker T. Washington.
Well, that is a great recommendation. And there are a lot of questions here. I'd love to get to them. One of them actually gets to your role as chairman of the Texas Republican Party. And this person asks, given that there are many conservative values in the Black community, and yet they don't get much support on your party, why is that, and how do you change that?
Well, I think, again, it's about understanding the history. And the Republican Party, I've always said this, they need to take marketing and communications 101. The most conservative people in the United States of America on a Sunday are Black and Hispanic. All you got to do is go into churches. But for whatever reason, we're not engaging with them Monday through Saturday. But when we do engage with them, we find out that the Judeo-Christian faith heritage, strong families, individual responsibility, quality education, small business entrepreneurship, service to the nation, they want to share those values. One of the great success stories that we had here in Texas from the November elections was that we took that very simple message down to the Rio Grande Valley, to the Hispanic community, and guess what? They overwhelmingly supported that message and supported Republican candidates, and they continue to do so. So I think that the Republican Party just needs to show up. And if you look at the comparative analysis and assessment of the histories of the two parties, you will see that you want to talk about systemic racism, it's not the Republican Party, young people. So do a little research and you'll find that out.
Okay. Bob Love asked the question, do you think decentralizing the education system would lead to more critical thinkers? I'm assuming there.
I would tell you that, if you go back and realize that once upon a time we had a government agency called Health, Education, and Welfare, HEW. During the Carter administration, they were split out into 3 different agencies, and the Department of Education was created. And really, it was the teachers' unions that put a lot of pressure on President Jimmy Carter to create a separate Department of Education. And when you look at what is happening today, the teachers' unions have an incredible amount of power, the NEA and the AFT, on our system of education. I think we've got to get away from that. We've got to get it back down to the states and to the local levels. That's where education is. And so the important thing is that education should be building up the young people that can be productive members of the respective industries of that state or that local community. I'll give you a case in point. When I was a member of Congress, I represented Fort Lauderdale along the southeastern coast of Florida all the way up to Jupiter Inlet. Well, that was like the maritime industry capital of the world. Now, one of the things that I was so upset with was that all of the people that were, on the cruise, the cruise, CREWS, of these yachts, they were from New Zealand, Australia, South Africa. Why were our own kids being trained up to how to be, the captain of a yacht or things of this nature, or, being able to go into the yacht building industry, or that, the provisions thereof and maintenance and servicing. So I think the most important thing that we got to do is get back to a public-private partnership so that we have more local businesses and corporations that are coming in and showing the relevance. I mean, that comes back to what Booker T. Washington was doing, showing the relevance and showing the functional aspect of education. I mean, if you're going to teach the Pythagorean theorem, then let a kid understand what you can use the Pythagorean theorem to do. If you want to teach a kid that, being able to write and speak properly is important, then bring in someone from the local newspaper to talk about writing articles. Then guess what? You have that kid write an article and you feature it in the paper. If you're, doing very well in the class, internship programs, all of those type of things. So yes, we need to get education back down to the state and to the local level. We need to make it functional and relevant.
I can see that we are definitely on the same wavelength, Northwood University and you, Colonel West, and Booker T. Washington. This has been a real pleasure for me to hear your perspective on these issues. For those of you that have been asking questions, I apologize that we've come to the end of our period today. I would invite you to our discussion board where you can post those questions and maybe we can discuss them amongst ourselves. And now I'll invite you, Colonel West, to have the last word. If there's something that you would like to share with students at Northwood University today, I invite you to do that.
Well, I would challenge you all at Northwood University to establish a Booker T. Washington Center for Entrepreneurship and Education. And I think that would bode very well, because what you are at Northwood University follows right along with the model that he created. And that's a model that I'd like to see replicated in many other colleges and universities. Instead of, teaching our kids how to be the next generation of, far leftist radicals, let's make sure that we teach our kids to be a part of the next generation of productive members of our society, and making sure that the free market economic system that has made the United States the greatest nation in the world, it continues on. And Booker T. Washington gave us a great roadmap. And I look forward to coming up and seeing you all at Northwood University sometime in the future. So get your campus opened up.
We'll work on that. Thank you, Colonel.
My pleasure.
Thank you all for joining us.